Boom. Hey, internets. I had a good question that I don't believe I've talked about. Well, I definitely haven't talked about it in a long time if I have made a video about it. But the question is, how does freelance design work? And so this can be helpful on a couple levels. Obviously, if you're looking to build a brand, not all of you are designers. Okay, so design is obviously part of the nucleus of what you're putting out there. Fashion design, graphic design is a visual language, right? So the aesthetic is all visual. So that's the way you communicate the essence of your brand story, etc. Even from the beginning of developing color palettes, understanding how branding and label systems can work. And even though in the beginning where you just might be doing T-shirts and a hat, or now it's so easy to do pad press. So it could be like a smartphone case, a hat, a duffel bag, or something like that. Like whatever mix of offering that you're going to do, whether it's a clothing line or merch, which is almost the same thing now, depending on how you see it. There's something to knowing what the visual aesthetic is going to be through and through. And you can be thorough with that in a number of different ways. So if design isn't your forte, it's smart to partner with a designer or just straight up hire a designer. And so to give you an idea of how terms work, also the other audience that I want to hit are actual designers or people who are looking to freelance. And so it's not that different from graphic design. Like if you were gonna have someone design your logo, I've definitely done like just a label or two, or printed neck labels inside of a T-shirt, or anything that's getting printed per se, all the way up to, as you guys know, I've done full lines. So the work scope that I provide when I'm doing design work for apparel is wide. So I could do SMU. I can do full seasons, capsules, which arguably can be the same thing. It depends on who you're talking to and the vernacular that the light in which we're talking about, the line. It can be just a couple pieces. I've done just denim before. And so just as with graphic designers, a lot of times what you're trying to do is get to the idea of what you need to create for the client, okay? Rendering what those items are going to be and chiseling down to the vision they have in their head and having it in a file, in a vector file, where they can then bring it to a producer, so a vendor, to then sample and then create and then mass produce is the end goal. Whereas in a graphic, it's you're just looking for something visual, but in terms of getting to that point, it's kind of the same. So what I'll do is I'll quote whatever it is. So let's say I'm designing 5 cut and sew pieces of a line. Just to give you a relative idea, that might lie somewhere around 350 a design. That's just for me. And of course, there's different things when you get into it. So maybe a brand owner has it all sketched out. So they're just like, I just need you to render this in a tech pack format so that it can get made. I'll tend to go a little bit lower on that. But what I will charge will be that fee to get it to tech packs, okay? Of course, because it's me, I can move further and go into production, which is a whole nother pay grade or a whole nother package that I would put together. But as a designer, if you're freelancing someone, you just want to get to the looks, to the tech packs. And so I'll give them like 4 passes back and forth. So if it's a client who's still kind of airy, they don't know exactly. If you're just coming to the table and you're like, oh, I just want 4 pieces. I want a jacket, I want a pant, I want denim, and I want a hat. And that's all you know. There's a lot of homework that needs to be done there. So, there's cabbie hats, there's snapbacks, there's fitted, which I would say not to do. There's 5-panel hats. There's all kinds of different SKUs and different there's different fits too. So if someone says I want a chino pant, there's still many options that need to be decided upon before you get to the design. So if a client isn't sure what they want, I'll have them do a ton of research. So tell me some brands that you like, tell me some brands you don't like. Do you have a jacket that you have in mind? Do you have one that you love? Why do you love it? That way, all of these things can give me information, so I could chisel down quicker to get to the silhouette that they want to see. Okay, and so within the 4 rounds, you should be able to chisel out the design and get it there. Now, with apparel, let's say if I'm doing 5 pieces, which is pretty much like a small grouping, I'm sure that'll come with label and trim, and so that's another aspect because I've freelanced just doing label and trim packages for people, but that's another element that you would add. So I would charge for that separate as its own contained thing, but then it has to work across all 5 pieces. And if it's a startup brand, you're going to need it to work across several seasons, because you don't want to make 1,000 woven labels of something and go, oh, you should make it so that you could use it at the front of a hat, and then maybe use it as a small label on a jacket, or maybe an accent kind of label that's in an odd placement but something interesting. So you want to think about that when you're laying it out and getting it all designed. You want to think of the use of those labels and those things. Hang tags is another thing that's going to be used throughout the first several seasons, so it needs to be very classic in a way. But yeah, so that's how it works. I mean, you want to find a designer where you can see a track record. It's really good to see on LinkedIn if they have worked for other brands before. For a lot of you, I've said you can find a designer by going to a brand you like and finding an apparel designer or graphic apparel designer or a graphic designer, whoever is at the helm, and say, hey, can you show me exactly what you worked on? I know you're at this brand and I love it. And then if their portfolio looks good, then give them a shot and say, hey, would you be interested in freelance? 99% of designers, especially if they're early or in the middle of their journey, are going to say yes. I used to always look for freelance. And from that point on, it's going to be, you pay for X amount of rounds going back and forth. And you chisel down to the look and get it to tech packages. Typically is where I bring it to. Getting production, that's a whole nother thing. So in any case, just a couple people have asked about that. Just wanted to let you know what that looks like from my standpoint of doing it almost 20 years. And I'm giving you the general basics. If like right now I have a contract on my table to really a very funded company to really develop their brand from the ground up. That's gonna be that's more of agency work where where they're giving me a monthly amount, and so that's different than the typical freelance that you guys might be looking for or questioning about. But if you have any other questions about it, anything you guys want to talk about, actually drop it all down below. Follow me on social media when you get a chance. I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.